It was a 36-count indictment, and it came back life. And I'm like, what? Who did I kill?
You were muling $100,000?
Of my own money, yes. My brilliant plan. I'm going to be another person, and I get a fake passport from Nicaragua.
How long were you on the run for? 5 years?
5 years. I was sticking to the fact I'm Jason Todd. So they knew or thought they knew I wasn't Jason Todd, and I wasn't going to tell them. I mean, I'm looking at a life sentence back in the U.S. You think I'm going to go volunteer? Let me see how much time I can last in Nicaragua. And boy, that was one hell of an experience.
FBI, open up! The FBI swarming a Miami house and taking a man into custody in the area of Southwest.
So say goodnight to the bad guy.
The agency says the 28-year-old was picked up after the grand jury indicted him and 5 others.
Larry Hartman, welcome to Honor Among Thieves, brother.
It's a pleasure to be here, really. It truly is.
Definitely. This is funny because this is one of these where it was bound to happen, of course, because we're good friends and we've known each other forever.
True.
But it's funny because the day's here, it's like, oh my God, he's on the podcast. That's great.
Yeah, it seems like something that should have or would have happened sooner, right?
Right.
And I'm so proud of you. I just want to tell you,
Thank you,
so happy for you with what you're doing with this. And you're in your lane, you found a great lane, and your messages, right? You may not realize this, but I watch a lot of what you put on.
Thank you.
And your messaging is spot on. In everything you do, your moral compass, your heart, everything's in the right direction. I can't say anything nicer about you. It's amazing.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you, really. It means a lot. It's been hard work. I mean, you've seen it. I've figured this out and had to pivot and turn and, full rebrand, which I was very hesitant to do. Mm-hmm. But it was the best decision I've made by far.
And I think most people out there, right, they don't realize exactly all the hard work that goes into it. To see a couple of people talking, got a couple of cameras, microphones, they don't see all the hard work, the editing, the lining up the meetings, the lining up the guests, right, getting on other people's pods, everything that goes into it. And it's a job that doesn't stop. It's a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour. Yep. I've called you late at night sometimes, and you've answered, right? So.
Yeah, no, I mean, when we first started working together, you used to call me on Sundays, and you'd be like, let me guess, you're at the office.
It's true.
Yeah.
And you were.
And I was, yeah. Oh, man. So, Larry, you have so many layers to your story. I mean, this is going to be a good one. I've been looking forward to this. I'm actually going to learn a lot about your story because I know the gist of it, and I know the main points, but I don't know the details on each phase of it. So I'm interested to break it down. And I think I've built my skills as a storyteller now, so I think I can kind of pick it apart and make it interesting with you. It's going to be fun to do this together.
Awesome.
Definitely. All right, Larry, so let's start at the beginning. Are you born and raised in New York?
Yeah, I was born and raised in New York. Actually, I was born in Manhattan on 2nd and 11th Avenue in Beth Israel Hospital. Then when in my young life, I was in Brooklyn. We moved out to the countryside when I was like 5 or 6, something like that.
Are both your parents Jewish?
Yes, okay. Both my parents are Jewish. Actually, my dad, and this is a big part of my story, my dad's a Holocaust survivor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he was born in Romania, it was at the time. Now where he was born, it's technically part of the Ukraine, right? It's not the Ukraine anymore. But yeah, his upbringing was, because not only was he in the concentration camps as a very small child, but after the war ended, most people don't realize this, but Jews and everybody else who was displaced were in refugee camps for years beyond that. My dad didn't come to the U.S. till he was 11 years old. And he had learned different language. Every day it's something different. And then on top of that, my grandfather, when he was liberated from the concentration camp, the Russians got there and they liberated my family from the concentration camp. The Russians then took my grandfather and put him in the Russian army. And since he spoke fluent German, he was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire growing up. He spoke fluent German. They put him in a special unit to go over enemy lines and get information. And fascinatingly enough, he'd gone on many missions. On his final mission, he came back, and he was the sole survivor, and he brought a German colonel back on his back with secrets that helped change the tide of that region of the war, which was pretty incredible. So my grandfather got back, and they gave him a 2-week leave. Unheard of for anybody, let alone a Jew, right? Let's face it. The world is what it is. And he went back to his family, and he goes to my grandmother, his wife. Listen, I'm not going back. They're putting people on the front line They don't even have bullets for the guns or guns. They're putting Jews on the front line with sticks, right? To just be cannon fodder and take the bullets, right? And that was, the Russians just threw people at Germany.
Wow. And
that's how they got through it. So make a long story short, they miraculously found each other at the end of the war, my grandparents. My grandfather had his connections with the Russian army still and became a smuggler. So, perhaps me going to prison was a foregone conclusion on a generational basis. And he made a lot of money doing this. He was making a lot of money in the refugee camps, but you weren't allowed to have currency on you. One night, somebody had, one of his competition told on him. There was a knock at the door. It was the police. My grandmother was in the toilet flushing all their money down the toilet as my grandfather was talking to the police trying to keep them at bay. And searched, nothing was there, but they lost everything in one night.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very reminiscent of so in Cuba, the hustle is to like smuggle things into the country, and you can make money. Like you could live very well, like better than everybody else if you
Sure.
So I kind of see the, obviously Soviet Russia and Cuba and all that. So I see the similarities there. And then also, speaking of refugee camps, my buddy Scarface, of course, he came in the camp and was under the bridge. My mother, a lot of people don't know that my mom was actually one of those refugees in those camps.
Oh, wow.
So that story is very personal to me. You know what I mean? My grandfather and my mother were like here in a camp. So yeah, a lot of those subjects are familiar to. Yeah,
and it's part of the human condition. I think we all experience a lot of things, through our cultures that, as different as they are, there's so many similarities that we can all relate to.
Right.
And I think a lot of it came through in my story. Blind greed from Ivy League to international fugitive. And Ross Mandel, Raw Media Official, they're producing the book and the movie, and I'm working with Michael Copon. It's all, part and part of the fascinating story we're going to go through over here right now.
Definitely. So your grandparents meet your father. So your father's a kid. How old was he when you said?
He was like 11.
Wow.
And, when he got to, it was like straight out of West Side Story. I'm sure you must have seen it. Except it was, not just the Italians and the Puerto Ricans, but throwing the Irish and the Jews. And my dad had to go through like an Irish, an Italian, and a Puerto Rican neighborhood on the way back home from school every day. And he used to tell me a story. He'd have rocks in his hand, him and his brother, so they could punch harder because they knew they were going to be getting in a fight regardless. And it's just the way things were back in New York during that time.
Yeah, back in those, the stories of like early 21st century New York are very interesting to me, right? That's where you have obviously Lucky Luciano and all those guys come up, and the mafia and the council, and the commission, and you have all the different like nationalities come in, pour into this one city, and you have, it's very New York is so interesting because it's been so influential in American culture.
Oh, without a doubt. When I was growing up, so we went to the countryside, etc. But as of like 12 years old, my dad would start bringing me in to work with him on the weekends, on Saturdays, to learn responsibility, to learn what it's like to work hard and get something out of it. So his store was on the Bowery, right around the corner from Little Italy, right? So I got a whole dose, and this is when Little Italy was a lot bigger than it is now. Right now, it's just one block.
Right.
Chinatown, so it's all consumed it. But it was fascinating, the people that I would meet. I mean, literally, the cast of characters that looked like they came straight out of movies, either when we were going to the restaurant, them come by the store. Jews and Italians seem to get along very well. In many ways, we have a lot in common, family, food, etc. So I got a chance to experience a lot of that growing up.
I remember I heard somewhere, read something about your family had ties to Mulberry Street. Was that true?
Well, no, we were like literally, my dad decided he didn't want to be paying rent anymore. So the smartest decision of his life was buying the building he was in. I remember my mom, when he made that decision, was making him crazy because she wanted a house, right? So they had the house. And she eventually got it. My dad prioritized the business, and it turned out to be the best thing that the family did. But we were right there on the Bowery, Bowery and Grand, right near Mulberry Street. I still have some incredible memories of that area today, especially come around the Feast of San Gennaro. Like that was when it looks straight out of like a scene right out of the Godfather.
Straight out of Goodfellas with the little.
Oh yeah,
carrying the Catholic saint and all that. Yeah,
I saw all that. It was pretty wild, pretty wild. So I then grew up in upstate a little bit, right? I went to college and then I went to law school at Columbia in New York, right? And so I became a lawyer, graduated in 1990, worked at a big Wall Street law firm, worked at a couple of big law firms before becoming general counsel of a publicly traded real estate company. This company was, at the time in the mid to late 90s, hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps even as much as $1 billion in market cap. And here I am at 28, 29 as their general counsel. I was really, sort of killing it. But what I came to realize is that I really hated being a lawyer, no matter what. And here I am watching people on, first I wanted to be an investment banker. I see all these guys who, weren't as necessarily sophisticated or have as much, and they're killing it, right? Traders. So I first went to do that. And actually, I met Howard Lutnick that way. He's the current, I think, finance secretary. But Howard Lutnick, I had a friend of mine, and he said, you want to come, Cantor Fitzgerald, the famous company? I went to interview at the top of the World Trade Center when it was around at the time. And I got to meet him personally. Went into his office, got these big Rodin sculptures there. And he said, listen, I'm happy to give you a job. But, my experience is that lawyers making the kind of money you're making don't want to take a pay cut and then take a chance on being a trader and seeing how it turns out for you. And I didn't have the balls at the time to make the decision. So took a pass on that one. But I eventually saw internet entrepreneurs. And they're dreaming up ideas in their dorm room or their bathroom or whatever. I'm like, and they're becoming multimillionaires, billionaires. I'm like, I got to give that a shot, right? So here it is, late 1990s, and I decide during the dot-com boom to start my own internet company. I had a friend I went in on with it. He had a lot of expertise in film festivals, and everybody was saying content is king. So I said, what better way to get content than a bunch of struggling artists putting it out regularly for film festivals? It's going to be a gold mine, right? So I started putting it up on the internet. People back then, you couldn't just upload it. You didn't have the cables in the back of your computer. And the internet speed was still like the wah, 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 AOL mobile thing, right? So everyone said things were going to catch up, but they didn't catch up quick enough. So we had people sending in videos to us. We were rendering them, getting them online, and we were running out of money before the technology was going to catch up with our vision.
Sounds like an early version of YouTube.
Yeah, basically, early precursor to YouTube. It's exactly how I describe it in my book. So yeah, thank you. And I had several investors at the time, one of who was a mobbed up guy who had started a sports book in Costa Rica. Now, to give everyone an idea, now you could just pick up a phone, place a bet, you get on an app.
DraftKings, all that.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't anything like that back then. It was a huge novelty for someone to go and open sports books overseas. And some people started doing it. They were doing it in Antigua, Jamaica, Costa Rica. And this guy happened to be doing it in Costa Rica. And, he came to me one day and he said, listen, as I was looking to bring more money into my company and ask him for another investment, he goes, not going to happen. And you got to pay me back one way or another. And those words weren't subtle, right? I didn't want to end up like some bloated carcass with a couple of bullet holes in the back of my neck floating down some river. So at the time, my company, Angel City, was very close to becoming public. And there's a certain magic to that. We both know Ross Mandel. He talks about the alchemy of finance, right? And, you can take a publicly traded company and you can convince people that they want shares in your company. No different than cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, euros, dollars, you name it. Gold is an alternative investment. So this guy, Dante, that's what I call him in the book. I don't want to use his real name. I still like keeping my neck where it is. He saw the value in that and wanted to take a couple of online gambling companies public.
Did you know this guy was mopped up?
Yeah, you know what? I did.
And that didn't I was like, maybe I shouldn't do business with this guy. Anything?
Well, you know what? Desperation makes you do funny things.
Ah.
Here I was, all of a sudden I go from having a bunch of money, living a great life in New York, going summers in the Hamptons, winters skiing in Vermont, to being in 7-figure debt, and that doesn't include the investments that were equity by other people. What do? I go, I'm not going to make this back just being a lawyer, right? And I hated doing that. So I said, let me take my chances. I always thought, sometimes people are a little bit full of themselves. I've learned a lot. The problem with youth is that it's wasted on the young, right? And I thought I could control the situation. And that was the challenge. So I went to Costa Rica. I knew I didn't want to get involved in their sports betting business because there's a guy named Jay Cohn who tested U.S. law on that. It was kind of murky still because where's the bet placed? Is it in the U.S., out of the U.S.? He tested it and lost, got some time. And but online casinos and online poker was still fair game, at least in the gray area. Nobody had gone after that. So we started a couple of companies and we took them public and we were starting to raise money. And this is how we eventually got into what got me in trouble. But there was a company called Pacific Continental, big investment bank in the UK, sort of working at the lower fringes of the market, helping startup companies like ours to raise a bunch of money. And they had raised us a good amount of money, and that was the capital that came into the company. We did okay with the online casino. With the online poker, kind of blew up in our face accidentally. You think you have a great idea. Poker had become this phenomenon, right? ESPN put it on late night. They had some dead slots. What are we going to do here? Let's throw that on, right? And it took off. People were fascinated. Next thing you know, NBC's having it on in prime time, and everybody's playing poker online. So we decided to get into that business. In fact, in 2004, the World Series of Poker champion, a guy named Chris Moneymaker, interesting name, right? He had won his entrance from an online poker site, and he won the World Series of Poker. So that just brought even more people into it. So we started, raised money and started an online poker company. And
is this around the time that Rounders came out? You remember that movie,
Yeah,
Rounders?
around the time, maybe a little
With
before
Johnny
Rounders.
Chan and all that?
Yeah, Rounders, one hell of a movie.
Oh, what a good movie.
I love that.
If you guys haven't seen the movie, go watch it, please.
Oh, my God. Malkovich, John Malkovich.
Oh, my God.
I watch those scenes over and over. They come up on my social media feed, and I'm just drawn in.
Don't splash the pot.
Yeah. It is my place, and I will splash the pot whenever I want to.
Yeah.
It's just
Matt Damon and Edward Norton. Oh, my God. What a good movie.
No, great movie.
So anyway, but it's around that time where poker kind of catches some wind and all that.
Yeah, and we think we're killing it, right? When our first 30 to 60 days, we have over $5 million in poker wagers coming in.
Wow.
We thought, my partner, Don, he comes in, get ready to be rich, filthy, stinking rich. Those were his words to me.
And how are you guys profiting?
Well, what happens is you profit from online poker. You bring people in, right? You don't make money from bringing them in. They then play. You make money when they play. You get a rake just like when you're in the casino, right? Every pot, there's a small blind, a big blind, and then part of the commission that the casino takes off the rake. Well, that's what happens, right? And there were two ways we could have gone about it. We could have opened our own poker room, right, and had an isolated sort of walled-off version, or we could have joined somebody else's. Now, our thinking at the time was that you need critical mass. If somebody goes onto an online poker site and there's nobody to play with, they're not coming back again. So we thought we needed critical mass. So we went with this one out of Europe called Prima Poker. And in fact, I went on to play in the Monte Carlo Millions poker tournament.
Wow.
This is a funny story, but I'll explain. So what happened, the way we make money was we make money off the rakes, and our guys were phenomenally awful. So these Americans with their new fascination of poker were getting creamed by the European players. So the $5 million disappeared like that. It cost us about 5% in fees to bring that money in, and that's pretty much what we made from our rake. And we're sitting there, we're like, what the? But in any event, so what I did get out of it though was this trip to the Monte Carlo Millions. I played against Chris Ferguson and Phil Ivey, and actually I finished in the top 20. I had a top 20 finish in that, so very, very proud of myself. There's a funny story about all that going on in my book that I think people will get a kick out of.
So you were actually a poker player. You weren't just like a behind the scenes guy starting this online poker company. You like to play. You actually played cards.
Well, I played with friends and stuff like that. So when we first got this invitation, I'm out to dinner with Dante. He goes, "Listen, I got good news for you." I go, "What is the good news?" "I got you an entry into the Monte Carlo Millions poker tournament." I go, "Yes." And then I started realizing that I had practically no poker experience, right? Playing a couple of night, 5-card draw with some friends late at night is nothing compared to going up these poker pros.
Right.
So I started getting onto online sites, and that's kind of where I should have suspected something was wrong, because even I was winning on our online site as a novice. So that gives you an idea of the kind of players we had, right? So I was kind of nervous going in, careful not to watch my tells and everything. But at the end, it ended up being very fruitful. So I was happy, even being a relative novice, to do as well as I did. Quick study.
Okay, so it sounds like the entire online gambling company and business was on the up and up, except for the gray area of the government not saying it was illegal, but it wasn't illegal. It was legal in some countries, so it doesn't sound like that's what initially started getting you in trouble.
Yeah, no, that's not what got me in trouble. So I mentioned Pacific Continental, right? A good friend of mine, owned an offshore brokerage company in Costa Rica. We were trading our shares through him. He set me up with offshore banking that, we could keep under the eyes of the U.S. government. I didn't think I needed it at the time, but, better safe than sorry, right? And they had one of their partners opened up a currency office in Barcelona, Spain. And they were selling currencies to people, calling them up, cold calling, selling them currencies. And I got a phone call from them saying, "Listen, I think there's an opportunity to raise money. There's tons of these places like Pacific Continental over in Barcelona, Spain. You should come here. I'll make you a couple introductions." Well, I got introduced to a couple of people thinking that we would sign them on and help raise money for the company so we could use it for the company, try to grow them. And I met this guy, Richard Pope, and another guy, Nigel Gibbs. And they came to me with a proposal saying, "Listen, that's great, but why don't we open our own room?" And I'm thinking, that gets the wheels in my head turning. I'm like, I know this is a financially fabulous business model, right? Pacific Continental was giving us 30 cents on every dollar. But when you're a starving company and you're hungry to bring money in to do, to realize your vision, you'll take anything, right? I figured we'd earn our way out of it, right? So I said, I knew this. So I said, okay, I'm in. And they go, "Well, here's the catch." I'm like, everything always comes with a catch, right? They go, "We need you to put up the money." So they need like $100,000 to put it up. I'm thinking to myself, here's a couple of guys. I only just met them, but okay, I'm in, right? Just impulse control. It's been something I've struggled with my entire life. This time to my benefit, or it depends how you look at it, since it was the beginning of my downfall, right? But we started within a month, we were making hundreds of thousands. Within a year, we were making millions. We started with one office, then two. Then we brought in Dom and Raul, which had like 5 or 6 offices.
So just to kind of clarify, so the way you guys made money is you started raising money for other companies, not just yourself, right?
I started raising money for Angel City, which was the online casino company, and Midas, which was an online poker company.
Okay.
I was taking the VIG out of it, and the companies were getting their 30%, and that was one I knew I had built in right there. But then I had been a lawyer for a while, and I'd been involved in microcap companies, and I'd gotten to know a bunch of people. So I was able to keep the deal flow going for other companies, more than happy to take 30 cents on the dollar to know they too could realize their vision, right? The hardest part when you're a small company is raising money. You figure you'll out-earn it because I'm going to do 100x once I get my business model going. So I was able to get a lot of companies under this umbrella, bring them in, and the more I brought in, the more the machine built in Barcelona. From Barcelona, branched out to Malaga, to Marbella, to Palma, Mallorca. At the end, by the time I got out, I think we had over 30 offices. We were doing probably tens of millions of dollars easily tens of millions any given month.
And raising all this money, right? And having, so like, obviously you're making tons of money, hand over fist, in the finance sector. At no point is there, and we'll get there, but initially when you start doing all this and you start expanding and getting all these offices, mentally, there's never a moment where like you have a scare. Everything seems like it's legit.
Well, okay. So I took great pains to go through all the legal hurdles, right?
Right, because you're a lawyer.
Right. So I set it up under this program called Regulation S, right? So you do not, normally when you want to sell shares, you have to register them to sell them to U.S. investors. There are certain exceptions, et cetera. But if you're going to, for some smaller amounts, the rules have since changed to make it bigger. But regardless, at that point in time, with the amount of money we were raising, the only way we could do it was under a rule called Regulation S. No U.S. investors could invest. We had zero U.S. investors. All the sales took place overseas. The money overseas. The nexus to the U.S. was the fact that it was a U.S. company since it was traded on a public exchange. It was a lot easier to get investors when they could see a stock price than just into some random private company.
All of them were registered on the NASDAQ?
Yeah, they were registered on the over-the-counter bulletin board or somewhere on the pink sheets as well.
Okay.
So the lower realms of the stock market.
So it was in the quote-unquote American stock market. That's why okay, now I understand.
Yeah,
okay.
Even though there was absolutely no other connection,
right.
That was sufficient, and we'll get into that later,
right.
I suppose. So,
all right, guys, taking a quick break from Honor Among Thieves podcast to bring you a word from our sponsor, and that is Federal Prison Tips. At Federal Prison Tips, we help people navigate the justice system from indictment, re-entry, everywhere in between. Whether you're a loved one trying to get relief for someone that you love that is in federal prison, you are currently in federal prison, or about to go to federal prison, we can definitely help you. Everything from plea mitigation, sentencing mitigation, PRSAR challenges, anything about guidance while you're in prison, actually what to expect if you're a first timer and have never been there. Whether this is your second case, third case, you haven't quite learned your lesson yet. Either way, we can help you with everything that has to do with federal prison. Good time, FSA, second chance credits, getting designated to a facility. Any issues you might be having within the federal prison system, we can definitely help. Honor Among Thieves podcast. Mention that you saw us on the podcast and you'll get special rates only given to those who listen to the podcast. Again, 407-434-0175, extension 7. Hit us up, federalprisontipps.com. Contact us. Let them know you heard about them through me. Now let's get back to the show. All right, so you're selling unregistered shares.
Under Regulation S.
Right. And because it's on the OTC in America, that's kind of how we start going down the slippery slope.
Right. Eventually it unravels. But before it unravels, we're doing quite well. A couple of companies don't do so well. Angel City and Midas end up going bust.
Right.
Unfortunately, I had one company that actually was a solar panel company. The company was putting solar panels on the outside of buildings and to have like a net neutral energy usage, which was kind of fascinating at the time. I made my investors 10 times their money back on that one.
Wow.
10 times their money. And then I had a number of other investments that I was getting them in over time. I did over a dozen companies. So what I was doing is it's very similar to what Trump did with Truth Social, right? There was a SPAC, a special purpose entity vehicle, right? And he backed his company, Truth Social, into that. Well, back then they were called blank check shells. And I was doing the same thing. But I would start raising money into what the company is going to be, right? So instead of telling people this is a blank check shell, we're just raising money,
right.
I said, well, this company is going to be in the oil and gas area. And this company is going to be in this area, right? And we had one company that was having advancements in turning seaweed into usable fuel, which at the time was making a lot of sense to people. Another one that was using microwaves to superheat sludge at the bottom of oil wells, like they're doing for fracking. Another alternative to fracking, let's say, which would have been cleaner, better for the environment, et cetera. Another company that board of directors that was comprised of professors from the University of Texas at El Paso. So these were all real companies that I would then merge into these blank check shells after I raised $2-3 million into them. And they gave these companies an opportunity to go and and realize their vision and make a go of things. So.
And since you were the owner or the partner in the firm that was raising the money, that 30% that you said the firm would keep, that was the profit for the company, meaning?
Well, okay, so what would happen is, that's a very good question. The funds would be, so let's say a stock's trading at $1, right? The people in the brokerage office, right, over in Barcelona, boiler rooms, if you want to call them that, they would sell the shares at 90 cents on the dollar. Listen, you're not getting a share that can be traded on the public exchange. You're getting a discount. Here it is at 90 cents on the dollar. When the money came in, it was then split up between the brokers over in Spain that would take about 50% of the money coming in. 30% of the money coming in would go to the actual company to realize their vision or to put money aside that we would merge a company into. I would get a small piece, and my partners would get a small piece. And the way we did this is we had a Panamanian company that would buy stock at 20 cents on the dollar from the company, right? So Walmart, if they get a special deal on something, doesn't mean they have to mark up their prices so much lower when they're sold to the public. Well, that was the situation with us from a legal perspective. Now, from a moral perspective, I've had a lot of time to reflect on it. I would not want my father investing in this, and I should not have been involved in doing anything like this. And in fact, sometime around 2006, I had, come to Jesus moment. Even for a Jewish guy, you can have come to Jesus moments. And particularly when Pacific Continental, I had modeled this off of the Pacific Continental model. And they blew up fabulously in the UK. It was very famous. They had involved, I think it was over 100 companies between Australia and the UK and probably like 6 other countries or something like that got involved. And I said, you know what? I don't think I want to keep doing this, right? So like middle of 2006, I told my partners I'm out. Took a little while to transition out. I was still handling, some of the paperwork on some of the old deals, et cetera. But before 2007 came around, I was already out. And I'm thinking, okay, good. I got this. I can build off of where I am right now. I have a nice chunk of money. Been using international banks. Don't have to worry about, people sticking their nose in places they don't belong, et cetera. And then I get a call in late 2007 from Richard Pope, original partner. He goes, I don't want you to get alarmed, but. Now, when someone starts with, I don't want you to get alarmed, but, you're getting alarmed. And he told me that Paul, who had become our escrow agent, had gotten stopped by UK authorities while traveling from Spain to the U.S. They had a layover in UK, and they took copies of all his files. Now, I wasn't sure what to think about this. Just a few years earlier, our Indian partners, Dom and Raul, had a sit down with Paul, Rich, me. Said, listen, we're having a couple legal issues pop up in the UK. Don't worry about it. It's all civil cases so far. But at the end of the day, they said, let's just keep information as little as we need, right? Nothing more than 6 months. And I assumed Paul had done that. Paul did not do that. So we had a whole hell of pain coming our way. In March of 2008, I remember I was in Costa Rica. I was driving down the street and I got a phone call. And that's when I got the news that Paul Gunter had been arrested. It was very fascinating. In fact, all of us got caught in very fascinating ways. So Paul was a British citizen and he was trying to get his U.S. citizenship. So Paul comes in and his family's with him. They're going to go to a nice lunch afterwards. They got a cake with them. They're celebrating. He got a notice. He's getting his U.S. citizenship that day. He goes in. Family comes in, looks around. All of a sudden, a bunch of FBI agents, crowd the thing. They arrest him, and they arrest his daughter, who was working at the manager of his office. Arrest the both of them right there in front of the family. Oh, yeah. No, brutal. So that happened. I get news of it, and I'm like, oh, my God, what am I going to do, right? So all of a sudden, I feel like I'm in the movie Goodfellas, right? Where Henry Hill is looking around for the helicopter.
He's looking around like, what's going on?
And I wasn't all coked up.
I told you, I've been seeing it all day. I'm telling you. That's funny.
I love that scene. But that's how I was.
That what's that Goomba Coke dealer? You want to see helicopters?
Yeah.
You want to see helicopters? I'll show you helicopters. Oh my God. That's so
Oh my God. So it was freaking me out. And I had no idea what I could do. I had heard rumors that if you were a Costa Rican citizen, they didn't extradite their citizen, but I never really looked that thoroughly into it. So here I am in a panic, wondering what to do. As it turns out, I was protected by my Costa Rican citizenship.
There's a couple interesting things before we move on.
Yeah, please.
One, all your business transactions were in Spain, right? Even though they were foreign investors, none of them were American. But because these companies, quote unquote, were on the OTC, on the American Stock Exchange, this is why the American government could step in and charge you?
Yes, exactly right.
Okay. What was the official charge they were not? Obviously, they hadn't gotten to you yet, but what was everybody getting charged with?
It was a 36 count indictment, right?
Wow.
Yeah. They bring a lot of charges, but they could have been a 3,000 count indictment because every single transaction is technically a charge.
A separate
right?
count. Okay.
So it was
securities fraud?
No, not securities fraud, oddly enough. So wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering. That was the vast majority of them. They went through a whole litany of things. And, it was intimidating as hell, right?
I bet.
I'm in a panic. And so I go to try to hire some lawyers. I figure, okay, I figure out that Costa Rica probably protects me. I'm not feeling 100% safe about this because there's something called extraterritorial renditions that they do. Kind of like what they did to Noriega in Panama, right? They went and took him. I'm just saying, right?
Well, I mean, Reagan just dragged his dick all over the floor and kicked in the door, just dragged him over to FCI Miami.
That's one way to do things, right?
I mean, in all fairness, the U.S. government operates kind of like the mafia. Like, when you fuck with them, they're going to come after you, and it is what it is,
Well, even if you don't, okay, so let me step back here. I'm going to take an aside. One of my co-defendants, I told you we all got arrested in pretty much fabulous ways. He was brought back on a plane. He was living in the Dominican Republic with his wife and small child. He was brought back on a plane to the U.S., and the story in the paper read that he was traveling in the Caribbean and his airplane had mechanical problems and they had to land in Florida. The truth behind that is Dominican authorities hogtied him, put him on a plane, and he went straight to the U.S. That could have easily happened to me, except Costa Rica's a little bit more of they look after their own interests, I guess, more than happens in the Dominican Republic.
Interesting enough, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of countries outside of the U.S. don't like playing ball with the U.S. when it comes to extradition and things like that, right? I've heard that before.
It depends on the country, right? Clearly, the obvious ones, Venezuela, Iran, Russia, China, they're not going to play ball.
Yeah.
But there are some countries, a lot of countries, more than you realize, have it built into their legal system that they will not extradite their own citizens. Japan, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. I could go on naming them on and on, right? But I was fortunate enough that Costa Rica was one of them. So I was in this weird situation of hiring lawyers to look after my interests. I had to then fly them down, and I actually started negotiations with the U.S. Attorney's Office from Costa Rica. There I am having conversations back and forth. In fact, one time, I remember we were talking about me helping out with something, right? Helping them retrieve some money and I said, okay, well, I can get like a waiver that you're not going to do this. And the U.S. attorney immediately jumps in, not over your dead body. Little did she realize that I happened to be at Panama at the time, and she could have come and got me.
Wow.
No problem. I had to get on the call. It was something I couldn't avoid. But, those kind of funny things happen during the whole course of things. That's why my book, Blind Greed, from an international fugitive, from Ivy League to international fugitive, it's so dynamic. It has so many different layers to it. From my background, from the whole, we grew up poor. It's not like we had money growing up. To all the little twists and turns. That's why it's a mixture of, I would call it the Wolf of Wall Street meets Catch Me If You Can with a little bit of the Sopranos thrown in, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
All right, so you're negotiating with the U.S. attorney. They're not playing ball. They want you because that's that's how they are. At some point, I'm assuming you're probably like, all right, screw this, whatever. I'm just not, I'm in Costa Rica. They can't come get me, one of these, whatever. And then what happens?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was kind of like that, right? In the beginning, I had hopes. I flew a lawyer down. I spent easily $250,000 on legal fees just to find out, just to negotiate, right? And the first time, I almost had a heart attack. I had the lawyer figure out what kind of exposure I was looking at. I'm like, 5, 10 years? I think it turned like a catastrophe. They did their sentencing guideline calculation, and it came back life. And I'm like, what? Who did I kill? What the hell did I do? Life?
Was it because of your money count?
It was the number of investors. It was the money count. It was being a ringleader, all this. And I'm like, how does that work? So I was in shock for a while. And, but yeah, that really took the wind out of my sails there. So we're trying to get a deal. The best that I could get them to do was 10 years. And if I understood exactly how the system works, that's the problem. I'm a lawyer, right? I had no clue how this worked. If I realized that 10 years minus, the 3 levels for, accepting responsibility and showing remorse, and might have been able to get 1 or 2 other for giving some money back or something, I could have got myself down to 5. If I knew that, I would have come in probably and done it. My lawyers didn't even know to tell me that. And these are people who used to work at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I mean, even they don't know the system enough to explain it and how things work.
Definitely a major problem I've noticed with everyone who's done a Fed bid.
Right.
The lawyers are just clueless, which is insane.
Yeah, when they're not just actually corrupt, right? The word criminal lawyer says more about them than what their profession is, right?
Right.
Unfortunately. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to say I gave the big FU to the U.S. government, because I still didn't want to be renditioned, right? And I didn't want to go that route. So I didn't get back into the game I was in, right?
Right.
But I did try to do other businesses, and I said, you know what? My family was asking questions. My ex-wife, now my wife at the time, now ex-wife, my kids, how come you're not going on trips with us, etc. So I actually had a connection, and I decided my brilliant plan. I'm going to be another person, and I get a fake passport from Nicaragua. But it's a real passport, right? It's actually real in every way. They repositioned me in the birth records, and I got a chance to pick a name.
Someone put you in Nicaraguan birth records and made a fake passport for you?
Well, it was a real passport using the birth records. Yeah. Using fake birth records, a real passport. And I picked the name. He goes, pick a name. I go, all right, well, Jason. I'm going to be on the run. What's Jason Bourne, right? It's what occurs to me. And I really, for whatever reason, I like the last name Todd, right? So I became Jason Jamie Todd Meza, or in Spanish, Jason Jaime Todd Meza, right? And that became my name. And that's how I started traveling the world with my family or on my own, trying to do business. I was skiing in Austria. I was going through Italy, the Amalfi Coast. I was in Buenos Aires. I was in Santiago, Chile. Traveled the whole world as Jason Todd, crossing borders, always secretly being fearful, but like somewhat addicted to the adrenaline feel of feeling like I was some undercover Mossad agent going somewhere.
You're wanted by the U.S. government and you're traveling the world under an assumed name. That's
with an Interpol red notice out for my arrest.
I don't know if that's the coolest thing I've ever seen or the stupidest thing I've ever seen. It's somewhere in the middle.
I think a little of both.
Yeah, right.
You know?
So, quick question before we move on. So, by the time you decided to get this passport so you can travel abroad and all that, I'm assuming you're living off the money you've accumulated off of the business?
Yes.
Okay.
Plenty of that.
If you don't mind me asking, how much money, when you stepped away and you found out the feds put out the indictment, like how much money did you walk away with?
Okay, so there's 2 answers to that, right? So easily in the low tens of millions, and as far as liquid. But when push came to shove, and I still had an equity stake in every one of the companies we were taking public. I believed in our model. I believed that we can make it work. I had one that was a huge success. I made really good money off of that. I figured we could do that with some others. And so if you were to look at my stock portfolio at the time, it was over $100 million.
So you had $100 million in stock and over $10 million in cash.
Yeah, and the stock evaporated overnight because the feds
Came in.
They came in, they shut down the ticker symbols, shut down the companies. They crushed every single investor in these other companies, right? They could have kept it going. There was nothing, no harm, no foul. If they let the companies just...
The investors might have profited.
Yeah, exactly. There were a couple of companies on the verge of getting big contracts when that came down, and it queered everything.
So the last part of this, before I want to move on, that I want to clarify, what was the government's excuse? Like, obviously, people knew about the risks of investing in these companies. Was it kind of like a hard selling style? What was going? What did the United States government say to say, you guys, this is illegal, you can't do this?
Well, it came down to the fact that I was using blank check shells when they weren't in vogue, popular, right? They became really popular.
Yeah, people do
during
that
COVID.
now.
Yeah, no, people do that now. The SPACs became very popular. I wasn't doing necessarily all the paperwork and regulation paperwork that should have been done.
Got it.
That's part of it. And then they totally refused to acknowledge that I put companies in these companies, right? So it wasn't like when Jordan Belfort in The Wolf of Wall Street, when they show up to some office, some shack with nothing in it,
Or
right?
like boiler room when you go into the building and it's phones. There's no one there. Yeah.
Exactly. It wasn't like that. I did merge real companies in each and every instance. Like, I kept all these files, I guess, just for my own edification. They're back in Costa Rica where I used to live. But I have, for every one of these deals, the due diligence that went into checking out what the company does, to ensuring that it had a real shot that investors would be able to make money. Now, like I said, would I want my father to invest in these kind of companies? No. And that's really when I should have walked away. But, my book's called Blind Greed for a couple of reasons, right? One is I was blind to the fact that I was as greedy as I was. Right. And second of all, that I became blind with greed, essentially. Here I was in Costa Rica. I'm around a bunch of people who run sports books. Half of them haven't even graduated high school, and they're making money hand over fist. And I end up practicing what I call moral relativism. It's a thing where your morality, you adjust based on the people you're around. And I'm much better than this person, that person. Doesn't make you a good person or make what you're doing good, right? I'm not going to pass value judgments on whether somebody's a good person or not a good. But what I was doing, I would not consider as something that I would be proud of at all.
So the government's argument basically was saying that you were conscious of the fact that these companies were not going to be successful, and you were basically taking in money for personal gain.
I was taking in money for personal gain, and they said that the shareholders had no shot. I mean, totally ignoring the one that made a tenfold return. Right. But overall, that was part of the misgivings I had when I got out of the business. I got out of the business towards the end of 2007. The indictment came down in 2008. You don't get absolved from walking away, right? And so I had to cover all that. And interestingly enough, I was deemed the ringleader, even though the year and a half that I had walked away, they made as much money as we made the 3 prior years.
Wow.
And I'm the ringleader.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was getting like 5% of every deal. I'm the ringleader. In any event, they get stories however they want. They craft their own narrative.
Right.
We all know what they do.
Of course. All right. So that's the case. They basically come at you. You're facing time. They really can't do anything to you because you're not in the United States. You decide to get this Nicaraguan passport, which is awesome. That's so awesome. Oh, my God.
Awesomely stupid.
I know, but that's like I said, the criminal brain in me is like, oh, my God, that's so awesome. But then the normal side of me is like, what an idiot, But anyway, so you get this Nicaraguan passport. You're able to travel the world. It sounds like you're living a pretty good life.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, 10 million is a lot in South America, in Central America. So I'm sure you're living a pretty good life.
Mm-hmm.
So you travel the world, you do whatever you want. Let's talk about a couple things you did while you were on the run, and then I guess we'll move into the next phase of your story.
So I was enjoying my family, right?
Right.
I got a chance, one of the great things we did when I was on the run was there's a place called Solden in Austria. And it looks something like one of those Swiss films that you'd see. It's right there in the Alps. You ski down to the resort that you're staying at. They make you 5-star dinners every night. You wake up in the morning, you ski right out. You're drinking great Austrian beer during the day. It was just, that was one fabulous thing. The tour of the Amalfi Coast, going from Capri, all up in Portofino, all up and down, went to Sardinia. There in Sardinia, there's a great resort called Forte Village. It's owned by Roman Abramovich, who's a very famous Russian oligarch, multi-billionaire. He owned the Chelsea football club in the UK for quite a while. And my daughter got a chance to become friends with his son and play with his son while they were at the resort. They happened to be the same age. Just interesting, fun things that happen. But all the while this was going on, a couple more of the dominoes started to fall. So I told you about Paul and how that happened. I told you about another one who got in Dominican Republic. Richard Pope actually was dating somebody.
Hold on, before you tell the story about Richard Pope, I want to revisit that Dominican story for 30 seconds.
Okay, please.
So that was your associate that they hogtied and threw in a plane and took to Florida?
Right, Simon O'Donnell.
So who was it that hogtied him and took him over there? Was it Dominican officials or was it the DEA kind of ski masking and going, not the DEA, FBI kind of throwing on a ski mask and going over there, and what happened?
Unclear.
Oh,
yeah,
no one knew to this day.
Never found out the identities of these individuals.
So I've heard stories of the feds going into other countries as mercenaries, going in there with a ski mask and machine gun, putting a gun to a guy's head, kidnapping him, and then bringing him over here and then throwing him in a park or something. And then, the feds moving, oh, freeze. I've heard stories like this.
Yeah, I can't tell you which direction it was, but I'm pretty sure that one is how it turned out.
All right. So your kids are playing with oligarchs and oligarchs' kids, and then Richard Pope. Let's go back.
Oh, yeah. So let's go to Richard Pope. So he is out of all things, he decides to stay in Spain, right? You figured he'd go on the run somewhere. No, he's still in Spain, and he's dating this woman, right? And he decides to call it off with her, right? Yeah, whatever. And little does he know that this woman is also a wanted person back in the UK. And so she's looking online at their version of America's Most Wanted Criminals, right? So the UK's Most Wanted. And she sees a picture of Richard Pope.
Wow.
Except his name is Richard Pope, not the name he had given her. So she's immediately offended, right? And she's like, that bastard, I'm going to go get him, right? And I read about this story. So she arranges to have a meeting at dinner and invites him to a restaurant. He's thinking, okay, good. Maybe we can shag every so often or whatever, right? And while they're leaning over, talking over dinner, all of a sudden, every table around them was Spanish police. And they arrested him, and they made a big scene of it, and they shipped him back to the U.S. I mean, at the end of the day, really, when I look back on it, there were over 13 agencies from a half dozen countries that had worked on my case.
Wow.
Which is kind of freaking insane when you think about it.
Holy cow.
I mean, I had direct conversation. Remember I was talking to the U.S. Attorney's Office?
Of course.
So people from the Serious Frauds Office, this is the top level in the UK, Serious Frauds Office. I was on with the director of the Serious Frauds Office discussing how these frauds work, right? Not giving specific information, but just talking generality to help educate him on this, thinking that would help me get a lower sentence at some point. But waste of time. Yeah. They just use you, try to get whatever they can, and move on. So
sounds about right.
Yeah.
So the dominoes start falling one by one. But you're good because they can't really do anything. You're still living in Costa Rica, still traveling under the assumed name that they have no clue about.
Right.
But you keep hearing about one by one how these guys are all going down.
Yeah. No, so I'm seeing these stories online, right? That's how I'm getting my information. There are actually little chat groups that had developed just about our case, right? So I'm able to follow up what's going on just by reading the chat groups. These people are getting information I can't find anywhere, but it's kind of fascinating. And, I remember the day I ended up first getting in trouble, right? My daughter wanted me to stick around. She had a science fair. I went with her to school that morning. We did this thing called magic bubbles. Basically, you take bubbles, use dry ice, they fill up with smoke, the bubble pops, it looks really cool, etc. She was having a science fair, but I needed to renew. I had to go out of Costa Rica to renew the Nicaraguan passport periodically because they have visa requirement rules. So at the same time, I had a big trip planned over the summer. I only had like 1 page left for visa stamps. Figured, let me go get the passport renewed in Nicaragua. Now, this was just the height of hubris, right? I I got my passport from an attorney who got it to me, right, through these connections. I then was able to get a Nicaraguan driver's license on my own. I was able to get my Nicaraguan birth certificate on my own.
Let me tell you, Central and South America, when it comes to corruption, it's just like on another level. The things you can get done down there with money is crazy.
Typically, not in this case. So I go in and to renew my passport, right? And they were having none of it.
Do you contact the lawyer again to get
No, that would be the smart thing to do. But, I figured I don't want too many people knowing about my business anymore that I'm renewing. And I'm like,
You thought it'd be a better idea to actually go to Nicaragua to get this?
I thought I could do this on my own. I got this, right? I had so many near misses and scares. One time I'm stopped at the border and one of the border guards goes to me, I don't, and he goes to get his supervisor and they go look at my ID and everything. And he goes, what else do you have? I give my driver's license and they look at me and they go, what's your blood type? And I'm thinking, okay, I know my blood type. I'm A positive, right? But it's the same thing, whether I'm Jason Todd or Larry Hartman, right? So I'm like A positive. Oh, okay, it's him. We can do it, right? Like, that was their genius move. But I had so many scares like that. There was one time I was muling a couple $100,000 back from Nicaragua to Costa Rica.
You were muling $100,000?
Of my own money, yes.
Why was the money in Nicaragua?
Well, because I had invested. Okay, I have a brother-in-law who lived in Nicaragua, and he had a numbers game, right?
Okay.
So it's openly tolerated in these third world countries, right? Or developing countries, they like to be called nowadays. So I invested in it. My brother-in-law needed a bank. I invested in it. I had $200,000 in earnings to be brought back, but he couldn't use the banks. I'm like, what the hell? I start strapping it to myself. And I had a real close call at the border with that. That's in the book. It's just so many different stories like that.
It's a real Wolf of Wall Street thing when you got the money taped to
your
body.
Yeah, except I did it to myself, not doing it to somebody else. Not to mention, I got a great Swiss bank story, but we'll get onto that after this. So,
how many of those close calls would you say you had throughout? How long were you on the run for? 5 years?
5 years.
5 years.
I'd say easily like 7 or 8 close calls. So they just became normal. So when I was getting questioned in Nicaraguan authorities, and I figured, okay, what's this going to cost me, right?
Right.
So I'm getting ready, as I'm in the Nicaraguan direct, they brought me in a private room with the director of immigration.
How'd you end up there? Because you went to like an immigration office to renew your passport?
Okay, I went to immigration office, the main immigration office in Managua in the central. And they said, no, you got to go in the back room there. They have some questions. I went through the question. So they brought me upstairs, right, to go meet with director of immigration. And so I start sliding like $1,000 across the table to resolve the situation, and somebody walks in right in the middle. Totally screws me over, screws my life over. I'm thankful in many ways. It's painful, right? We know it's painful going to prison. My kids, the first time I was on the phone with my 8-year-old daughter, and she said, "Are you still going to be my daddy?" I mean, that was
terrible,
crushing. That was bone shattering.
So the guy walks in on you in the middle of trying to bribe the guy.
Right.
Let me guess. You had a bunch of money taped to you?
No, this instance I didn't. But I did have a few $1,000s on me,
right.
Pocket change, carrying money, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you try to bribe this official for him to just renew your passport so you can move on. Other Nicaraguan officials walk in and catch you bribing him. I remember, I remember you saying something along the lines of like the passport itself wasn't that serious. It was them catching you bribing somebody that was like the big deal.
Well, it's hard to say now, looking back, right? Either way, at that point in time, I was done for. But I was sticking to the fact I'm Jason Todd. So they knew or thought they knew I wasn't Jason Todd, and I wasn't going to tell them. I'm looking at a life sentence back in the U.S. You think I'm going to go volunteer?
No.
Let me see how much time I can last in Nicaragua.
Right.
And boy, that was one hell of an experience. You get brought in, and it's a place called the El Chipote. People should Google this, right? It's Nicaragua's dirty, dark secret. It makes like Chateau d'If from the Count of Monte Cristo. It makes it look like a picnic, a walk in the park. It really is. So you walk in, there's an old style, like metal door, like from the Wild West. You take
the skeleton key.
Yeah, skeleton key, pulls it out, opens it. Then you're going down this dark, winding highway. They have wires coming down from the ceiling with a single light bulb in them, with very little light. And you're walking past insane asylum doors. These are metal doors, literally with the peephole that go across. And so they opened one of these doors, went to put me in. I could make out 3 different shapes, and I saw bunks against the wall. Now, these bunks are splintered wooden planks, bug-infested, that are built into the wall, right? That's all you have. You don't get a pillow. You don't get a blanket. You don't get soap. You get nothing. All you go in is with the clothes on your back. And so I had my sneakers, socks, underwear, T-shirt, and jeans. And my sneakers became my pillows, the whole thing. So you're cinder block all around. And up top, the only view towards outside, it's not even a view, is there's a 2-foot by 2-foot ceiling with rebar across. You can't break out, covered by sheet metal. And then near the front, there's like a half wall. And on the other side of the half wall, there's a hole in the ground, and there's a hose up top with water that you can open a spigot and water comes out.
And that's your shower.
And that's your shower toilet. That's your
my
shower
God.
toilet. You never leave. It's not like when's rec. I got laughed at by I'm like, when do we get out of here? They go, when you're released. When you're lucky enough to get released.
All of a sudden, I'm just, smells are coming to my mind that, oh my God, I don't even want to imagine that.
And the heat was brutal. This was towards the end of the rainy season. So the heat was just abysmal. You're fanning yourself all day. There's no escape from it. And then we happened to be there during the beginning of the rainy season. So, the first, I think it was about 2 weeks in, the rain starts coming down and it's pouring and pouring, and hear it and you smell the dust, the musky air that comes up from the first rain, and go to sleep that night. And I wake up and I'm like, what is that? Right? And I'm like, okay. And I go lay down and like, something's on my arm. I get up and look up, and in the darkness, my whole bunk is crawling with ants.
Oh my
The
God.
whole cell is crawling with ants because the rain came, flooding them out, and they're looking for higher ground, and we're the higher ground. So it was just insane. We're fighting them off. We pick up our sneakers. We're battling them, looking to where they come in.
Let me guess, these are like Central American ants, right?
Oh. Thankfully, they weren't like red ants or
Right.
fire ants or
Right,
something
right,
like
right.
that. So it was funny. One of the guys in there is Guatemalan, and he said, "Oh, these are a delicacy in our country."
He started eating them. Oh my God. Protein. You got some great protein.
He didn't start eating them, but I'm like, as we're getting, so it took us like 6 hours to get rid of the ants, right? It was just brutal.
Who were you in there with? It was the Guatemalan guy. Who else?
Okay, he was there for human smuggling, and then I had another guy in there. Interestingly enough, he was a customs guy who was accused of taking bribes. Yeah, me, I'm in there for giving a bribe. He's in there for taking a bribe, right?
Oh man.
Funny. And then the last guy, he was, he's claimed he was innocently with a friend who went and did an armed robbery. So, but in any event, I could have been with a lot worse. They were murderers, killers.
That's another thing I was going to say. I think you're pretty fortunate because in a Central American prison, there's some real hardcore guys in there.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And in fact, I'd hear them from other cells because at night, when everything died down, people start calling out to each other, where they call it the telephone network. And they start screaming out to each other, who's this, that? You hear people get, there was one night we heard one guy getting pummeled, right?
Oh, wow.
They brought in one guy one night. The guards just one night, they beat the piss out of him, right? But they love fucking with you because
The guards beat the shit out of somebody in one of the cells?
yeah, he was
must have been
a
terrifying.
child molester, so
Oh,
he didn't
well,
really
all right.
he got no sympathy.
Screw that
But
guy.
they fucked with us. They pulled me out, so you're sitting around in your underwear all day because it's just fucking hot as hell. And they pulled me out, because they want to test you, right? And they make me get on my knees, right? And the guy goes and starts mocking me, what do you think of me? And I'm like, I don't know, you're powerful, you're this, you're that. I don't know. And finally I go, you're handsome. And everybody starts howling, right? I'm like, oh, fuck, that was the wrong answer. And then he just hauled off and punched me in the face.
Oh.
And I just took it, right? I didn't say a word. I think it put him off guard, right? He's used to getting a reaction. So after that, he's like, get him out of here. And they pulled out the Guatemalan kid who just was crying and shit. So, yeah.
Well, Could have been worse. A
Yeah.
punch in the face versus getting the shit kicked out of you
Yeah.
by like 6 or 7 guards.
Right. Even my last night there, it almost kind of was worse in a way. Remember I told you about the rebar and the hole in the cell?
Yeah.
Skunk fell into the cell.
No, my
Oh,
God.
yes. Oh, yes. Okay, even the guards took pity. They broke all protocol, opened the door, got us out in the hallway, and put us in a different cell. But yes, yes. That
A
was pretty
skunk
brutal.
fell in your jail cell? That's insane.
Yeah, that was probably, I wouldn't want that to happen to my worst
No
enemy.
tomato paste.
No, we had nothing. Oh, so I wanted to tell you about the Swiss banking story because it's just too funny.
Okay.
So I'm making good money, and one of the guys.
This is back before you're ever
Yeah,
indicted.
this is before I even get
All right.
arrested, but I think it's a story worth telling just because it's hysterical. A friend of mine recommends us to his Swiss banker. I'm like, all right, who doesn't want a Swiss banker, right? You know? So we head over there, and I got my wife and my son and my baby daughter in tow. So it's got to be like 2006. We get to the bank, and it's a beautiful town. It's Zurich. I mean, just old, quaint old town. Got a castle on one end, really nice. And we go to the bank, and I go inside and go up to like the tellers. I'm like, I have a meeting with this guy, Eve. Can you hook me? Oh, no, you have to go enter in the bank. That's private banking. I'm like, private bank? Okay, good. I get there, go up the elevator. The elevator's got like fine wood on the inside, beveled mirrors. We get out, and the people who are wearing ties, from the customers, the people working there, suits, ties, beautiful skirts, beautiful paintings on the wall. I'm wearing my cargo shorts and a polo shirt. I didn't tell my wife at the time. She's wearing like a juicy couture sweat outfit, which is, and I see smoke coming out of her ears, right? I'm like, oh my God. And so we go down this long hallway with these Oriental, Asian rugs, right? The Turkish and Oriental rugs and the beautiful paintings on the walls. And we get put in this huge office to wait. And she teed off on me. You freaking idiot. What the hell? Why didn't you tell me? And then if that wasn't bad enough, so the banker comes in without batting eyelash, didn't say a word to us, was polite, handsome, tall, great. And my daughter, Yael, she goes and poops at that point. So now we got a stinky diaper. We're dressed like freaking stupid Americans, boorish Americans right off the boat. It was just, we had no problem, though, when I deposited $3 million in my bank account.
That'll make them take you seriously.
Yeah. That was, Swiss banking was great, yes.
All right. Okay, so back to Nicaragua. How long do you spend in El Chipote?
Oh, so I was there for 30 days. I'm there, and I'm like, what will they do with someone when they don't know who he is, right? I'm like, they got to let me out eventually, right? So I'm waiting. About 2 weeks in, I have no hope of getting any visitors. Once a week, they do have visitation, right? Otherwise, you don't leave that cell. All of a sudden, my name's called. I'm like, who the hell's coming to visit me, right? I get out there. I don't recognize anybody. Some guy in like a plaid shirt, looks like it was made out of a tablecloth, and some like dirty brown khaki pants and some shoes that are all scuffed up, comes up to me, hugs me. He goes, pretend I'm your brother-in-law. And I'm thinking, okay, this is great, but Jason Todd doesn't have any brother. He doesn't have family. That's like the whole thing, one of the reasons, what is part of my backstory. But I'm like, okay, so he's talking to me. My wife had hired him, and he said, just hang tight. It'll be about 2 weeks, but he'll have me at the border meeting my family again. I'm like, wow, this guy's a miracle worker. I didn't think much of him when I took a look at him, but what do I know? So I went back to the cell with that hope, and I was just hiding in like my little corner of the cell, waiting for that to happen, when unfortunately things went the other direction. So what he did, I was able to piece this together afterwards. He gave them my Costa Rican cédula, which had my name on it.
It had your real name on it.
Which should have been fine. I had no problems in Costa Rica. And in fact, at one point, they sent in the U.S. Embassy to take my fingerprints, thinking, oh, he must be on the run from the... But nope, came back empty because I'd never been charged with anything. It was a sealed indictment. So they called the Costa Rican version of the FBI. It's called OIJ. And they call them and they ask about me. Any problems? Why is he doing this, etc.? And they go, no, nothing. Oh, wait, I think there's something here from Interpol.
No.
And because of the sparked memory of some Costa Rican officer, I got jammed up and was then looking at a life sentence as they went to go ship me back to the U.S. So
then it all comes crumbling down.
Yeah, it all came crumbling down. And, I remember they drove me to the airport. Well, before that, they actually had a huge press conference. They dragged me in, all cuffed behind the back. I got 30 days of beard. My beard grows in really thick. And I'm looking like a master criminal. I'm like Charles Manson had nothing on me that day, right? And then they decided to make a spectacle of bringing me to the airport. They got, I think, every Nicaraguan police car that didn't have a dent in it, which isn't that many, but taking me to the airport with sirens blasting, racing through traffic as if I'm going to be rescued somehow by my merry band of men, like Robin Hood or something like that. And they almost hit a push cart along the way. I mean, just imagine some guy pushing his push cart. And they get me to the airport. I'm there. I'm on full display for everybody at the airport, waiting to be put on the plane. I had a couple of officers from the U.S. Embassy put me on the plane. Then when I landed in the U.S., there was a good 6-8 officers waiting for me there. Took me to Secret Service. I mean, I was getting the VIP treatment, just not the kind of way you want it, right?
Yeah.
You always dream of having your own police escort somewhere, just not quite that way.
How'd they ship you over there, in a regular plane, like on a commercial flight?
Yeah, they actually put me at the back of a commercial flight, which is interesting because a week before I got in trouble, I was reading with fascination. Guy, I believe his name was Eric Toth. He was on the top 10 of the FBI's most wanted list.
Wow.
And they sent Cessna from Quantico for him. So I was kind of hoping for the same, but I didn't get that.
Fortunately.
Yeah.
You were wanted, but you weren't that wanted.
Yeah, I was cattle class.
Right. So you're on the commercial flight. You're heading back to Florida?
Yeah, so we're heading back to Miami. In fact, the guy who was escorting me, he was doing his thesis on people who have fake identities, right? So he was questioning me on the way back. I felt like I was being interviewed, right? But it got my mind off of things because, I think Modern Family was the movie that, the TV show they were showing on the screen on me, and everywhere I look, I'm seeing family. I'm like, what did I just do to mine? I have 3 small kids. What kind of stupidity? That's when the hubris really comes crashing down on you. And I use that to fuel myself going forward as I went into the prison experience, when I did get to prison. So it took a while to get there. It was, besides the 30 days in Nicaragua, a couple of weeks in FDC Miami, followed by a year in Pinellas and Citrus County just to sign a plea deal. Why does it take a year to sign a plea deal? Except they're part of my penance, right? They're really trying to jam me up there.
Why Pinellas County?
That's where the case was out of. My co-defendant, Paul Gunther, he was living in Tarpon Springs, which is part of Pinellas. So that's where the case was brought out of. So, yeah.
What was county jail like?
County
much
jail.
Much better than Ed Chipote.
Yeah, much better. And even, I'll say I got a soft landing at Pinellas, right? We had open bay, so it wasn't like you were locked in every night. I remember the first, and I'm sure you do, the first time you were locked in, when I was in FDC, the first time I got locked in, and you hear that metallic click, you're like, oh shit, I'm stuck, right?
Yeah.
And that really hits. But there we had open bay, but I didn't see the light of day for a year, right? You get a few inches on the bottom of a wall, a few inches on the top of a wall, so air can come in this sort of outer air area. But that's it, you become pasty white. And for the first time, you really appreciate just how much your life is out of your hands. So I remember I got a hemorrhoid, right? You go in a bathroom there, they got the sandpaper for toilet paper.
Wow.
And I got a wicked hemorrhoid. So and you can't buy that kind of stuff on commissary and county jail. It's not like going to federal prison. So I go to put in to get to see the nurse. I figure it'll go away. A few days in, I go to put in to see the nurse. And it's a she, right? And they make you show exactly what you have. So there I am, spreading my butt cheeks for this nice nurse. And she got, yeah, I mean, that was the height of humility, right? And she goes, yep, you have a hemorrhoid. I'm expecting you to then give me some cream or something I can put on it.
Or something.
All right, I'll put you in to see the doctor. Took another 5 days to see the doctor. It started off as maybe like a golf ball. And it turned into practically a softball by the time the doctor saw me. And then when I see the doctor, he goes, wow, that's terrible. Why didn't they give you anything for it? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. You know, but these guys are there. They just come in every so often. They don't understand the system any more than anybody could understand the system, right? It's just messed up in every way, shape, and form.
So it takes a year for them to come back at you with a plea deal. What's the plea deal like?
Oh, so the plea deal is for 20 years.
Jesus.
And then I had some money I gave back and remorse and this. And my co-defendants actually got off. One went to trial. Actually, 2 went to trial. And they got hit with 25 and 13 years. So I knew I wasn't going to trial, right? I'm like, this judge was already showing signs she hated my guts. Last thing I knew was going to push her into a place where she was going to give me more time than 25. Right. And then my other co-defendant, Richard, he ended up testifying against those 2, and he got 5 years. So I'm like, oh, I gave money back, this, that. There's got to be a way for me to get, closer to what Richard got, right? And so my 20 years turned into 10. I was hoping for more like 7 or 8, but the dice fall where they fall, right? The judge, it really hurt me that I was a lawyer, particularly since I probably went to a better law school than my judge did. So I think she took it out on me pretty hard. But in any event, so I got to prison a year after starting serving my sentence, essentially. And within 2 days, I had already gotten into one of those cardinal rule breaking issues where I got in a fight in prison.
You got in a fight in prison?
I know. Go figure, right?
How soon after getting to prison did you get into that fight?
Within 2 or 3 days.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so what
Tell
happened
me about
was,
that.
so we were on the basketball court, right?
Okay.
And against better judgment, when people were telling me I wanted to play sport, do it. I was playing basketball in county jail for that little tiny room. What the hell? So I'm playing. I have next, and some guy goes, "No, we got next, right?" And I'm holding the ball, right? And he goes to push the ball out of my hand and hits my chest. And I'm like, okay, everything I know about prison, and I'm in a low. And this isn't just a low. This is a low that's more like a medium, and we got people with pen points in there.
Right.
Because there's an RDAP, a Spanish RDAP, so they give people variables to get in. And so I'm like, pushing back. Next thing I know, 2 guys cold cock me. I go to swing, but they're already gone. I got blood dripping down over here. I got blood dripping down over here. And I run to the bathroom because I know you don't want to say anything to anybody. Right? But then I'm in there for a while. Somebody I knew came in, right? Somebody had, how friendly can you become with somebody in 3 days? Close enough that he came to look on me. He goes, well, that's bad. You're gonna have to go to medical, right? And so I got to the officer, right? He's in his office right there in the rec. He goes, oh shit, man. That's his words to me. He looked at me, he goes, oh shit. I'm like thinking, oh, this can't be good. He goes, what happened? I go, I fell playing basketball. He goes, you didn't fall playing. That's what I did. Look, I got take me to medical, same shit. They actually sent me out to the emergency room to go get stitches. And then I came back, and then they put me in the shoe, of course, right? So here I am, finally get a little taste of freedom, and I'm in the shoe, right? You come in, you're shackled, you're all alone, and I got a swelling head, right? So I go, day one, I go to ask one of the officers, can I get some ice for this? My head's bulging. He brings back a big green garbage bag of ice, goes, here, make it last, right? Like I'm supposed to keep ice from melting somehow. Right. Bastard. In any event, so they found the guys. One of the guys did have pen points who cocked me. And because I didn't land a punch, they ended up letting me off. The other guys got shipped out. But because I didn't land a punch. And this was the worst part, though. I hadn't seen my kids for over a year at this point. I'm in county jail. You don't have contact visits. I didn't want them to come see me like that. So I'm going to see my daughter for the first time. She's now 9. She's looking forward to seeing me. I'm being told I'm still going to have my visit, although I'm looking kind of like Quasimodo on my face, right? And I didn't get called for visit. My dad came with my daughter. They were crying. It was as if I didn't punish them enough. My stupidity jumped in to punish them again. And, these are the kind of things I use as fuel to try to make me a better father, to try to make me, remind me never to even, I try not to jaywalk nowadays, right? It's that kind of thing.
The Fed scared me straight, I'll tell you that much.
Oh,
for sure.
boy, yeah. No question. I don't want to play with that again.
Even when I'm speeding, I'm like, whoa, all right, slow down.
Yeah, the little things. And even here in Florida, where you have like a license to speed, right?
Yeah.
Practically.
So you're at the low in FCI Miami.
Mm-hmm.
When did you get out of the shoe?
I was in the shoe for 30 days. So I had another 30 days.
Until they shipped the other two guys or whatever?
Shipped the other two guys out.
Were they like gang members? What were they?
I don't know. I don't know all the details.
All right.
I mean, I never found out all the details, but I know one guy had pen points and he was in his 20s.
All right.
Just to give you an idea, right? So.
All right. So you get out of the shoe. Tell me what happens next.
Oh, yeah. So I get out of the shoe and I say, I'm adamant. I'm not going to let this be a waste. I know you were like that too, right? You went in, you had your podcast teed up and you went in, you're like, I'm going to use this to jump. So I was not going to leave this be a waste. So I started writing my life story, Blind Greed. It started writing it at the time, taking notes on what it was like, everything, because as a follow-up to Blind Greed, I have Blind Justice, which is about the times in prison, which besides this story I just shared, there's dozens of others that are equally insane. And so I start writing. I write a book called The Happiness Principle, which is about, interestingly enough, I did not appreciate my life with all that money, with the family and everything, not nearly as much as I should have. In fact, I was unhappy in many ways. I was addicted to Xanax. I was drinking too much, etc. And I found more of my happiness and exploring that while I was in prison. Now, there's still every day, there was a dull fog, right? You just miss your family and you miss everything about your life. Dull fog. But I found through reading a lot of different philosophies, sort of philosophical principles that led me to create the Happiness Principle, which is something I'm very proud of. I also wanted to help people who were facing addiction like I was before going to prison. Thus stemmed the 101 Tips for Staying Clean and Sober. And I actually edited and wrote an online addiction magazine, not just online, because it was a magazine as well in paper form, called In Recovery. And I did that 6 issues, very professionally done because I had help on the outside for that. And then I did Blind Greed, Blind Justice. I was teaching all the time in education. I always had teaching jobs with teaching courses. One was in the stock market, another one was I taught a Hebrew class for anybody who wanted to learn. And I explored the spiritual side of my life, right? I think that is critical. Too many of us, especially the young children nowadays, teenagers, 20s, 30s, right? There's a disconnect and you feel it and it's tangible. And I think it's a problem, a lot of the problems that are caused in society right now. And, I had an opportunity to have that spiritual reconnection because I kind of had it growing up and it meant a lot to me and it was very, very meaningful.
All right, guys, taking a quick break from the podcast to talk to you about Gus Villa Jewelry. Yo, let's be real here for a second. If you're rocking plain jewelry in Miami, of all places, you are doing it 100% wrong, my boy. Step your game up with Gus Villa Jewelry, the plug for real Cuban link gold and silver chains. And of course, the cleanest Rolexes in all of Miami. This isn't factory made or watered down or any of that stuff. This is high quality, custom, handmade stuff that shines from here to the moon. It turns heads, starts conversations, and makes you look fresh. Gus has something that'll level up your whole vibe. And because you're locked in here with us at Honor Among Thieves Podcast, you're getting a hookup. Use the promo code Montana at checkout. Get 5% off your entire order. That's right, 5% off. Go check them out at GusVillaJewelry.com or pull up on them in the Diamond District down here in downtown Miami. GusVillaJewelry.com. Again, that's GusVillaJewelry.com. And tell them your boy Montana sent you. Gus Villa Jewelry. Now back to the podcast. While you were in there, I remember, I forgot it was you or Ross that said this joke about you guys. Well, first, Tell me how you ran into Ross in there. I want to hear that story.
You know, I first met Ross. I'd been in already for about a year when Ross came in. Well, less than a year, but Ross came in like a bull in a china shop, right? Ross just has that kind of personality. And, you know, it's funny. I felt oddly pushed away and pulled towards Ross's personality at the same time. It's difficult to say. I mean, the more I got to know him, the more I got to love him. The guy got a huge heart. But, you know, he came off with, he didn't think he was going to be there. He didn't think he was supposed to be there. He had an appeal that he thought he was going to win and he was going to be out. So I get it, right? You know, I'm a short timer here. This is all a mistake, right? But he didn't. And we ended up becoming cellmates together. They called us the $1 billion cell because between the three of us, we had restitution of over $1 billion. Me, him, and a guy named Eric, right?
That's funny.
But we also we were also working together to give back to the community. We taught courses together through the psychology class, right? Department. We had an opportunity to teach courses, and we had a great time with it with some interesting characters. One guy was from Mafia, and he used to shake down Allen Iverson. Another guy was in the military. I mean, just a whole collection of people.
That's what. You know what I think is crazy about prison? You get put in a room or in a building with a bunch of guys that had it not been for this crazy decision I made that landed me in prison, I wouldn't like. There's no other circumstance where you can get all those guys in one room. You get what I'm saying? Like, I remember Ross saying a story one time that when he was on American Greed and like this biker gang guy came and found him that also happened to be like he was affiliated to the mafia, and so it's like crazy stuff like that you're just like, wow, like, and on what other circumstance would I be around this guy? You know?
No, and I got a funny story about that guy also.
Go ahead,
What happened was I had become friends with Lou Pearlman.
From NSYNC and Backstreet Boys.
Exactly.
Okay.
I became friends with him in prison, you know, and there was this weird thing going on where there were people on the outside trying to rip off inmates and their families. They were trying to sell them, releases, etc. And some people had been taken by this, right? And I'd been approached, etc. And talking to Lou about it. And Lou was talking to the feds about it, trying to get time off, right? Giving them information. He goes, you want in? I'm like, who doesn't want to get out of prison earlier, particularly if it's about somebody who's trying to take advantage of inmates and their families.
Right.
I thought that was a pretty freaking low thing to do. So I did. I actually spoke with the feds once. They're in prison, right? They came, take it to a special room, etc. And then I want to say it was a couple months later, and that same biker, he was the enforcer for the biker gang. He just wasn't a biker gang guy. He was the enforcer for the biker gang.
What biker gang?
Pagans.
The Pagans, huh?
Yeah.
So let me guess, he had like the beard and all that? No.
This other ones did, not him. He was clean shaven for some reason, but the other guys did.
Okay.
And I'm out on the rec yard. And he calls me over. He goes, Hartman. And it's not like we spoke regularly, right? He calls, Hartman, come here. I'm like, all right, how you doing, man? Listen, I'm going to ask you something, and you need to tell me the truth. I'm going to know if you're lying. I'm going to know. So you need to tell me the truth. And I'm thinking, oh, shit. All right, here it comes, right? Fight number 2, right? He goes, are you talking to the feds? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I am. It has to do with this. And he goes, well, I got to get in on this. They took my mom for 10 grand and those bastards. And I'm like, oh God, thanks. That's not how I saw this one going. Whoa! I'm thinking there were going to be 2 hits. Him hitting me hitting the floor, right? But yeah, so that was an interesting story.
So they scammed the biker gang's mom for 10
Oh,
grand.
yeah,
That sucks,
they did that to a lot of people. So then I was able to give them a significant amount of information. I had this. They eventually caught the guy, brought him to charges, everything. Of course, when I come and have my lawyer give a call and say, listen, Hartman helped out here. No, it wasn't sufficient enough, right?
Of course.
They ain't giving you anything, right? You know, but you live on pipe dreams in prison sometimes. You know, but, I think about all the different times that the feds did people dirty, right? I know I'm not happy about my case, but I've seen, there was one instance where there was this one guy, he owned a boat shop, right? He's repairing boats for people. And one of the guys he was repairing boats for was a drug dealer. And the guy said he didn't have the money. And they had him, the boat guy, on the phone saying, I don't care what you need to do to get the money or how you get the money. I just want to get paid. Boom, gave him a charge for that.
Wow.
Another instance, there was one of my roommates, a guy named Glenn, really sweet guy. Must have been in his early 50s, black guy, bald head, just sweet, round stomach, worked in the kitchen, right? You can't help but love him. He was a small-time drug dealer working on street corners, right? Gets approached one day, you want to make some extra money? I got this thing going on where, there's somebody with drugs. We're going to go take it from him. You in? He's like, all right, I'm in, right? They did this to 3 other people, right? He didn't know. Comes with the guy on the night of. They go, you got a piece? I don't got a piece. Right? Well, here, why don't you take this with you? You go, all right, right? He ended up getting 15 years. They go in, right? It's a sting operation. FBI comes out, freeze, right? He ends up getting 10 years for the charge, plus another 5 years for the gun that the guy gave him on something he wouldn't have done on his own volition, right? It's just, that's the kind of nasty stuff that goes on here as people try to make their careers. And you just wonder, how they sleep with themselves at night, right?
Yeah. It's a lot of what the feds do is really evil. And it's all kind of their own form of greed, right? Like our greed as criminals is money and power and all that, but theirs is power too, and it's winning at all costs, no matter what. And it causes you to not really look into the facts of a case and kind of look things over, and it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, at this point, I've noticed that a stark difference between the feds and the state is that the state actually, they have to do detective work and they have to investigate and they have to get evidence against somebody, right? And the feds is just like, they have all this power and they just, they intimidate you into saying whatever they want them to say. You get people to rat on you that aren't even telling the truth just because they're scared and trying to get off time. They'll tell the feds whatever. It's a broken system. And then unfortunately, it's one of those things where like civilians, and I used to be one of them, it's like, well, if you got charged, you must be guilty of something. And it's like, yeah, I'm guilty, but if you would have read my indictment, you would have thought I was a criminal mastermind.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Everyone gets raised on Law and Order and CSI.
SVU,
and they come in with the attitude, well, if he's not guilty of that, he must be guilty of something, right? If they're a drug dealer, the feds have a script for that. Look at these felons he hangs out with. If you're a white-collar criminal, there's a script for that. Look at all this house he has and cars. It must have been ill-gotten gains, right? So they play their game, and it's a win-at-all-cost mentality. It used to be, way back when, that our country would rather let 10 guilty people go than put one innocent person behind bars. It's turned on its face. 100%. They've flipped the script to exact opposite. And it's a shame. It's, there are some people definitely that I met along the road that you do not want in public, right?
No, they belong in prison.
They belong there. But the vast majority of people, I think, even China puts 30% of the people that they arrest on home confinement. And that's China, right? How much more criminal are people here, But so yeah, that is a little bit disturbing. Some of those stories. Even there was one guy, he was a doctor, right? And he would write scripts, and he was this mild-mannered guy, just wants to please. So he'd write scripts for his nurses and nurses' aides, right? To be able to just give to people later on when they come in later for their appointment, so they didn't have to wait. He got jammed up. He got 10 years for that because he was writing scripts that he was just giving other people for that reason, which was against the law. And they were so mean and vindictive that here the guy hardly had anything. He was living with his mother when they brought him in. They went while he was in prison and took his clothes. Wow. They went to actually his house to take his clothes as part of the forfeiture.
That's hardcore.
Yeah.
Took his clothes.
You have to be pretty mean-spirited to go do that, right?
Yeah. So, Larry, we could probably talk for another hour. Your story has so many layers. I mean, we didn't even go deep into your relationship with Lou Pearlman, the founder of all the boy bands and all that stuff, and how. So I guess we'll wrap up with this. Tell me how you came up with Blind Greed, your book, the title, and the story behind the title, and all that. We'll wrap up with that.
Thank you very much. So, Blind Greed, which is going to be starring Michael Copon. He's in a movie called Prisoner of War that came out on September 19th. And he's been in a lot of things. Blue Power Ranger, One Tree Hill, used to date Vanessa Hudgens and Kim Kardashian, among other incredible things. The guy's hugely talented. And Raw Media and Ross Mandel, they're producing the movie and the book, etc. So Blind Greed came about. I wrote my original version of the book, and it was relatively awful at the time, but I got Lou to read the book. And I asked him, help me out with the title here. I'm having a hard time. He came back to me with like 10 different titles, 7 or 8 of which had the word greed in it. And I'm like, what the hell's greed have to do with my story? And it took me a little while, but I realized I had inadvertently become an expert on greed. Now, nobody wants to be thought of as greedy, let alone an expert on greed, right? So this was a pretty pivotal thought, but it gave me a lot of thinking, right? So I broke greed down in my mind to different levels. What's the first level of greed, right? You want things. I want that Rolex. I want the Gucci, the Prada, the Rolls Royce, the mansion, whatever, right? That's your first level of greed. Then came my thought, okay, what's that second level of greed? Because I broke it down to 3 levels. Second level is having a bunch of people waiting on you hand and fist. Servants, sycophants, anybody want to hang out who wants to be with you because of your money, right? You feel a sense of power as a result of that, or a sense of belonging. Whatever your sense is, it's impacting you and your ego. But then the highest point of greed is not so much what you want, but when you want it. Right? You can want that nice Rolex, and if you work hard, great, power to you. But if you want that nice Rolex and willing to take shortcuts to get it, right? Then that's a whole different story. There was a famous experiment done decades ago with kids, and they go, "Do you want 1 cookie now or 2 cookies later?" And most of them picked 1 because of the now, right? Eventually, most of them grew out of it to appreciate 2 cookies later. But some of us, they want the 2 cookies now, and let alone the whole bag, right? Right now, I want it now. And that came down to my study of what greed was all about. So I came to realize that I was blind to the fact that I was as greedy as I was, as evidenced by the story I just told, but also the fact that I became blinded by the greed. And I was willing to let myself practice that moral relativism I talked about and do things that I ordinarily otherwise wouldn't do, because in my mind, what I was doing was so much better than what these other people were doing. And so that's the essence behind it. It's really a compelling read, tons of stories. This is going to be followed up with Blind Justice, which has all the prison stories, which are legend, right? And it's from Ivy League to International Fugitive. Basically my life story, what makes, what you would consider a boring, staid individual, a lawyer from New York, decide to go on this crazy, insane ride that turned into my life.
Wow. Larry, hold that up. So where can people buy the book?
Right now you can get it on Amazon. You can also get more information about the book at Raw Media Official, or you can go to my social media on Instagram and Facebook. That's primarily where I have it. So
amazing.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nelson. What you're doing here with your podcast is magical.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. So I'll make sure to put all the links in the description, and whoever wants to buy a copy of Larry's book, it'll be there. Larry, I typically wrap up asking the same few questions. So I usually ask what's next, but I already know, obviously, we got the book, we got the movie deal. Excited to be a part of that. I'll ask the next question. What do you hope to be remembered for?
What I hope to be remembered for at the end, the most important thing for me is to have been a good father. I'd also, as a result of what's happened in my life, my third book, which is writing itself still, is going to be called Blind Redemption. And I really want to be looked at it and remembered as somebody who made a mistake. I screwed up royally on so many levels. I'd like to think that with the time I had left and still have left, that I'm able to make up for it in a meaningful way that people can see beyond what I did during that time to see me as in my entirety.
You believe in redemption?
Totally believe in redemption. There's in the Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, there's a belief that by changing your future, you can alter the past. Wow. And, this is proven out by quantum physics also. So I'd like to think that on some level, even though much of this may be beyond my comprehension, that I can do that. And I do believe in redemption for that reason.
You believe you've redeemed yourself?
I believe I have the potential. I think I'm on track. I don't think I've made complete amends. Still got a long way to go, but that's what I'm in the race for.
Well, as a friend of yours, that's, I would consider you in the circle. You're definitely on track. You're a great guy. I'm excited to, work on these projects with you. Very, very happy to bring you on my platform, family. We've been friends for years now, and this is something that was bound to happen. So finally, I'm glad we finally got it done. I
am too. It's really, I'm so proud of what you've done here with this. You've taken this thing, you've persevered. Resilience is my watchword, and you are the perfect example of what it's like to be resilient.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you. All righty, guys. That was another episode of Honor Among Thieves. Special guest Larry Hartman, international fugitive extraordinaire. Push it to the limit. The world is yours. If you're not chasing a dream, life is meaningless, guys. Catch you on the next one. Say goodnight to the bad guy.
FBI, open up! The FBI swarming a Miami house and taking a man into custody in the area of Southwest.
So say goodnight to the bad guy.
The agency says the 28-year-old